episode 1 of ABA, The Inside Track, a podcast where we bring behavior analytic research to you. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me are my co-hosts, Dr. Diana Perry Cruz and Dr. Jackie McDonald. Hello, co-hosts.
Hello, Rob.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Diana.
Hi,
Welcome.
Jackie. Why, thank you.
Well, it's so great to have you here talking about this episode's topic. So, for those new listeners, which is everybody, as this is episode 1, what we'll be doing every episode is talking about recent research, recent behavior analytic research on a theme. This month's theme is infant behavior. We're going to be talking about 2 articles, both from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. One is Kadey and Roane's 2012 study, Effects of Access to a Stimulating Object on Infant Behavior During Tummy Time. And the second, we're going to be talking about Thompson, Bruzek, and Cotnoir-Bichelman's 2011 article, The Role of Negative Reinforcement in Infant Caregiving and Experimental Simulation. So let's start off with the Thompson article on the role of negative reinforcement in infant caregiving. Jackie, could you start us with a very quick summary of the article itself?
Sure. So, before I begin talking about the article, I want to tell you why I love this article.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Don't give away the good stuff too early.
No spoilers yet. But the reason that I feel that this is an important article when we talk about infant behavior is because infants cry, and they cry a lot.
You don't say.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to figure out what happens when infants cry and to see what caregivers do when infants cry, because that seems to be really important to prevent child abuse. So what they were doing in this article is looking at caregivers' responses and how those caregivers' responses could terminate crying, or in a no termination condition, what would happen if the crying just was inconsolable. So what would the caregiver's responses be?
Right. Because that sometimes happens in real life.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So some babies, they cry. You can figure out easily what's going on, right? There's a short list. They're hungry. They're sleepy. They need a new diaper. They're cold.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm. That's about it, right? Or they just need a hug.
Sure.
I guess you could say. But then there's those other babies that you go through the list and they're still crying and you don't know why. So that's really what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So one thing to point out is in this study, they don't use an actual infant due to ethical concerns. So they use an infant simulation sound. And just a tip for everyone out there that wants to know what this sounds like, you can actually purchase a CD on Amazon.com that will give you a variety of infant sounds from I'm a hungry cry, I'm a scared cry, I'm an inconsolable cry, and it lasts around 30 to 36 minutes. So if you don't have a baby in your house, but you want to feel like you have one, you can go and buy this CD. I have it at my house.
Oh, you just turn it on.
I just turn it on.
You want to go to sleep with that.
Yeah,
get used to it. Attenuate.
They recorded an infant from one of their daycare centers who reliably cried for 30 minutes prior to nap time, with parental consent, of course.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So they have this cry. They have these baby dolls in a room. And so what they do is that the participants are picking up these baby dolls. They're doing a whole lot of caregiving responses, rocking, feeding, playing. And they're looking to see what responses maybe terminate crying. And what they found, spoiler alert,
Here comes the spoilers.
What they found is that for most participants, caregiving was shown to be controlled by a negative reinforcement contingency, but we had 2 participants who their caregiving responses were resistant to extinction. So that would be interesting to watch, actually, and maybe figure out some previous histories with them, but we'll see. So it's just really interesting to think about that and think about how that can, affect how we train parents.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jackie, thanks for the summary. For those of you at home, if you're following along with the article, we're going to talk next about the general procedure. So, Jackie, would you go into what they do in this article?
Yeah, so we had, all of our undergraduate participants. And so the participant would come in and the experiment would tell them that they were going to determine how adults responded in these situations of caregiving. and they told the participants to do what comes naturally. So they had 3 conditions. They had a negative reinforcement condition, where the experimenter would present a recorded infant cry, and then the participant would have to perform the target response, either vertical rocking, feeding, horizontal rocking, one of those, for 3 seconds. If they performed that response for 3 seconds, the crying would be terminated. And after 5 consecutive minutes of engaging in the target response, then the condition would be over.
Which is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Well, not for
You've
all
heard the
of them.
CD, you know.
No, but at that point, the crying would have terminated, but you have to continue engaging in the behavior for 5 minutes.
But I think that the cry was represented only if the target response ceased for 3 consecutive seconds. So, if I'm rocking the baby,
Yeah.
and then I rock it for 3 seconds, and it stops crying, and then I stop
Yeah.
for 3 seconds, the baby starts crying again.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yep.
I guess 5
Totally.
minutes of rocking is a long time.
That one is not so. I think it's the playing, because I picture you like playing with the little keys like above the baby for 5 minutes. That seems like the only one that seems like a long time. The feeding, you would do that for 5 minutes. The horizontal or vertical rocking, I think you would do that for 5 minutes naturally, but it's just the playing with the keys seems like a really long time.
Maybe because I'm an auntie, I do a lot of playing.
That maybe I try to put the baby down as quickly as possible and back slowly out of the room.
Yeah, so that was our first condition. This was one of our test conditions. We also, the experimenters also had an extinction condition, which actually sounds pretty horrible.
Yeah.
Where the experimenter presented the recorded infant cry for the duration of the session, independent of the caregiver responding. So whatever they did, the crying just happened. So they were rocking, they were playing, they were feeding, and that's just kids crying. And they suggested this was typical of a colicky baby. So yeah. And this was the control condition. I don't know if I said it was a test condition, but it's definitely the control condition.
Okay.
Yep.
So if the caregiving was sensitive to negative reinforcement contingency, one would expect that those previously reinforced target behaviors would decrease under extinction.
Got it.
And then we had a final condition, which was called the no cry. So here, this seems like Dream Team, that the baby did not cry at all. So here, the infant's needs have been met. The infant's content. You can do whatever you want. They're doing great. And this was just an added experimental control for one participant, because this was one of the participants whose caregiving persisted under extinction. So they wanted to see if it was primarily evoked by infant crying or something else.
Right. Was their behavior sensitive to the contingencies in place at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they used...
automatically reinforced vertical rocking.
Right, maybe. You never know.
You never know.
And they used a reversal design to kind of assess functional control or functional relation.
So, given all these conditions, what happened? Let me describe the graphs for you at home. There's a line and an X and a Y axis. No, we won't really be telling you this. You're going to have to look in the article yourself.
Exactly.
But we can certainly describe the overall results to you now.
So what we found was actually 9 participants, their caregiving responses were controlled by negative reinforcement in the form of escape from and avoidance of that recorded infant cry. So that was those caregivers' responses occurred to avoid the infant cry, and when the cry stopped, they may have stopped their behaving, and then...
But not for long.
The
They
caregiver
kept
bit,
doing
yeah.
it for 5 minutes.
Right. So that was pretty
They
interesting.
very effectively avoided the cry. Once they figured out what was the correct behavior for that session, they pretty much stuck with it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and they, remember, this is one thing I didn't say in the procedures, but they varied the
Right.
target behavior according to sessions. So sometimes it was vertical rocking, sometimes it was horizontal rocking, sometimes it was feeding. The experimenters didn't tell the participants what that was, so they just had to contact the
Right.
contingencies.
Which is the same for babies. They don't tell you
I wish they did.
what condition it is.
They have
Right.
a poor
Wait
man's
for you to
repertoire,
figure it out.
I'll be honest. It's,
It is worth noting that this is a cumulative record graph.
So it looks like up.
It's important for me because, I mean, I guess you could say the cumulative record graph is like the duckbill platypus of graphs. You don't see it very often, right?
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Right?
No.
And then, but the changing criterion design graph is the unicorn of behavior analysis.
Nobody
So
ever uses that.
I hope that
They're so
someday
cool,
we
too.
can review one of those, but having a cumulative record is pretty special.
Yeah,
as well.
It absolutely is, especially since soon it's going to be Skinner's birthday. He's going to be 101 years old.
Oh my
in
goodness.
ghost
He's
form.
111 years old.
Oh yeah, just kidding. 111.
That's a pretty special one.
It's on my
111.
Yeah. He's going to come back. He's going to be our next guest. Our only guest.
You're shooting high.
What do you think, Skinner?
Whoa, Jackie. Great. So these graphs are lovely, just straight up vertical on the diagonal line, pretty much. In that they assessed the contingency once it was in place, they stuck with that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The behavior was clearly responsive to reinforcement.
Except for 2 participants.
Right.
So when you're looking at one of the last figures, you can see that 2 participants showed that their behavior were highly resistant to extinction. And Diana, what does that mean for our folks at home? What does resistant to extinction mean?
Well, Jackie, if a behavior is resistant to extinction, then it would continue to occur in the absence of the reinforcer that was previously.
Absolutely. So in this
reinforcement.
case, what that would look like if they had a previously reinforced response, such as rocking horizontally in one session, and then that response was changed to rocking vertically, the participant would actually continue rocking the baby horizontally for the whole 30 minutes, even while the infant was crying, which sounds like a murderous nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess that's what happened. So yeah.
All right.
So in that case, 2 of the participants did not demonstrate experimental control because they had those highly behaviors that were highly resistant to extinction.
Did they have any? I don't recall, but did they have any kind of hypotheses as to what might have been going on there? Or is it just a fluke?
It's hard to discern from the graph why that could be. What I wanted to look up here was there was 3 of the participants were parents, and one of the participants reported that she was the mom of 2 colicky babies. So I was sort of interested to see if that might have had an effect on her behavior, but however, that was not one of the participants that showed resistance to extinction.
So what the article suggests is that these 2 participants that had prolonged exposure to extinction and still engaged in the responses that were not leading to reinforcement, maybe they just didn't know another response to do. So that was one of the things that they talked about in the discussion is part of parent training should include, here are the many ways that you can move your baby around. I know when I hold newborns, I just hold them in one spot, and if they move, I freak out a little bit. So I mean, giving me a newborn and telling me to go with it, I might actually just continue to horizontally rock that baby until the cows come home because it's scary to put them upright. So that might be a good aspect of future research, looking at how we can train new mothers in hospital settings, the different ways that you can soothe your baby.
That's a good point, Jackie. In this study, I hope you keep that.
Hey, she just said I had a good point.
That is a really good point. I know that they do that to some degree. I remember learning about like the football hold, where it's a particular way where you hold your baby's head in your hand and like drape their body over your arm, which is supposed to be really good if they're crying, but there's not a lot that's really given when you take your baby home. In this study, did they tell them ahead of time what the responses were going to be?
Nope, they just said do as you normally would.
Okay, so maybe these 2 participants had no previous experience with infants.
Right.
But we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay.
So now that we've gotten into the gist of the article itself, what kind of jumped out at you about this research? Whether it's the line of research, limitations, questions that you still had that were unanswered.
What I think I would like to see is one of their future areas of research is to actually use those dolls that you get in high school
Yeah.
to see real life caregiver behavior. Because in the instance of here, it's only 30 minutes. You know, you're playing with a baby doll. You have these strict things that you can do with them. But you're going to see more instances of, you know, what we'd call abuse if those baby dolls are like crying in the middle of the night or crying at the grocery store, because those are when the EOs for such things are going to be more potent, I think.
Yeah. And they didn't, in this study, track other types of perhaps challenging behavior on the part of the participants, so we don't know. We know what they weren't doing.
What would you think, when you say challenging behavior, what sorts of behavior would you...
You know, like
sort of be defining
some type of stress response on the part of the caregiver. Like they could either measure something, or they could look at grimacing or cursing, or maybe
common parenting techniques.
Moving the baby too brusquely.
Yeah.
Things like that I think would have been interesting to see. Did those start to come into play the longer that the baby cried?
Sure. And I think that would be relevant in terms of, Jackie, like you said, line of research of or line of application.
Absolutely.
Training parents, because you know when you think of parents getting frustrated with their babies, they're not, this kid's crying and I'm now engaging in these other. I mean, it's very affected by, it's the middle of the night, or I just did this 20 times in a row.
Absolutely.
And I'm not outwardly showing any signs. I'm just sweating more, or I'm bulging out, you know, but signs that would be good to notice or to be aware of, you know, in your own behavior and the behavior of your partner.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's important because, well, if you think about developmental psychologists, this isn't a problem, right? Because it's so short term, right? So infant crying happens for the first, 6 months, 3 months.
It's like 18 to 22 years.
Yeah.
Usually get a lot of
Right, yeah.
But, you know, it's not tons, so we all know we're going to outgrow this horrible phase, but that doesn't mean that this horrible phase isn't something that we should really, you know, help to improve the lives of parents and babies.
Well, and as a new parent, it is nothing like you've experienced before. It doesn't feel like this will end. You don't have an end date in time, and it's like when you know, people can tell you, "Oh, don't worry, this too shall pass." But yeah, you're not living with this baby right now. Once if you have multiple children, you have that expectation. You have a bit of a better sense of what you expect from the baby years. But again, every baby's different. You could have a colicky baby, whereas the first one was a perfect angel, and you almost have to relearn your parenting skills. So I don't think it ever hurts to have a refresher course, or a course of almost study of, you know, what should you be expecting, what should you be looking for, what are the signs in yourself, in the infant, what could you see if you're not properly trained, or if you're not able to deal, accordingly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that panic really starts to set in when you have exhausted all of your tricks. You know, when you've tried everything that you know.
Up, down, side to side keys, feeding.
What is it? Up, down, left, right, left, right.
That's Nintendo. That's a different thing.
That's not what you're talking about.
No,
he's talking about the responses here.
Oh, sorry.
Rocking,
I thought you were trying
vertical.
to...
I know I'm not the PhD on the podcast, but I do think about things other than video games.
I thought you were trying to get all your lives on Mario or whatever. What was that the key to? Up, down, left, right?
It was the Konami code.
I don't know what
this is
any
irrelevant.
Of those
Why are we talking
I don't know
about
what any of that means.
I thought I would know what you were talking about.
I'm a
just
doctor
now.
of nerdology, folks, not behavior analysis. I'm just the host.
Fine.
But yeah. So I think another thing.
It's too bad that babies don't come with a cheat code that you can type in on your gamepad.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't have a baby. I only have my friends' babies. But I think that this line of research would also be applicable to dog whining, because I experience anger with my dog whining, and I also know that it is negatively reinforced.
Right.
My behavior, and most of the time I should be ignoring it, and I am not. Mm-hmm. So it's gotten horribly bad, especially on weekends after 7 a.m. So I think that's another line of research that we could look at too. Bring it
Absolutely.
Into.
Well, this just happened to me today with whining as well. So it's not limited to infant crying, but 4-year-old whining seems to produce the same types of responses.
Yeah.
In me.
Mm-hmm.
You try everything to get it to stop.
I just want it to stop.
Yeah.
Like, immediately. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and we're all certainly practitioners, and I feel like I don't have a meeting with a parent that doesn't have some variation on this theme. You know, I understand why you're doing everything in your power to make this behavior stop. Because,
it's
man,
incredibly aversive.
I know you want to. Yeah, it's very aversive.
Absolutely.
But we have to be aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and look at our alternatives.
It seems funny to me that, although I've never had a child, that they don't really give you tips and strategies for infant challenging behavior, but they will give you tips and strategies for sleeping and talking to your kid. What are those things that were
talking to your kid?
I was surprised that kids only cry an average of 2 hours a day. That seems like a little bit of time.
2 hours a day sounds long to me.
Sounds long to me too.
Maybe because you've experienced it, but it's like that's like an entire Bachelor episode, right? Like, I can watch The Bachelor and have a baby be crying, and then the rest of the day, the rest of the 22 hours...
It doesn't work that way, though. It's distributed.
Right.
But that's
it's really hard to listen to a baby cry.
It is one of the more aversive sounds, because it is paired with a lot of... Pretty much every aversive sensation you've ever experienced is tied up in that, because you've got the sense of something bad could be happening to this baby. This cry is signaling all of the worst possible things that could happen in the next hour if they don't stop crying. You know, maybe the baby is going to be ill. Maybe the baby is going to need medical attention. Maybe
true.
my spouse is going to yell at me that it just never, it's everything.
It also signals that you cannot go to sleep.
That's true.
Yep.
So these are nice things to think about, because without me having a kid, I was like, 2
Jen,
hours.
do you have a kid? I'm curious.
I don't have a kid. But 2 hours, I was like, oh, that's like no time at all. That, in my life, I was like, oh, that's just like...
It's like a visceral reaction.
Part one
You're
and
like,
part two.
make it stop.
Well,
make it stop now.
And you're also talking about a behavior that is much more intermittent. You know, if it were, your baby's going to cry from 12 to 2 for 2 hours, I think every parent would be able to handle it, because it's like, that's very clear.
Your baby's fine.
You know it's going to be done. It just happens. It's just a reaction of growth, of maturation. Mm-hmm. But when it's, you don't know when it's going to happen. Right. That's an average.
And you don't know how long it's going to happen.
I mean, God forbid the poor parents said, my baby's never cries. They're always really quiet. They stop crying in a second. And then for whatever reason, they become colicky. Or for whatever reason, they're ill and they start crying a lot more. They're not prepared for that change in their baby's behavior. And just like any of us, baby behavior will change based on, factors in our environment.
Yeah. And I think that some people go into parenting with the expectation that you're going to be able to meet your baby's needs immediately and that they should never cry. And the nurses do say that to you. They say babies cry. Sometimes babies cry. And perhaps that's because people don't think that that's going to happen, So if you are going into the whole thing thinking, well, every time my baby cries, I'll just pick it up or feed it or change it, and then it won't cry. I will have satisfied its needs. Then encountering a baby that doesn't immediately stop crying is going to really throw you for a loop. Mm-hmm. It does. It is very, when it's your own baby in particular, it's not like any other response I ever have felt.
Well, I would say even with, sleep training, if you're a parent who's following the cry it out method, which is not, if you don't have children or you're a new parent, cry it out is not just let your kid cry forever. Don't worry about it. It is something that you are kind of almost shaping their returning to sleep behavior. But even
good way to put it.
No, thank you. I thought of that one at 4 a.m. the last time I had to do this a few months ago. But even when you're following a procedure in which you're like, I've operationally defined what I'm looking for. I have a procedure in which I'm going to wait 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes before checking on my baby. Even having an actual concrete time, my baby's going to cry and that's okay, and I've given myself this out, it is still just a horrible 5 minutes. It feels like an eternity. Mm-hmm. And God forbid if you're, say, at a hotel, so you're in a different environment where your baby is probably going to cry more. They're not used to the stimuli around them in that setting. But you're also
wake
now...
everyone else in the hotel up.
You're suddenly dealing with that aversive. Someone's going to come yell at me. Someone's going to physically accost me because my baby's crying. My other children will wake up and want to watch TV. it is really a snowball effect, and it is kind of funny to think about having a sense of what's going on in this basic parent reaction. And no parent is going, my baby never cry. Every baby is going to, like you said, Diana, every baby's going to cry.
You're going to cry. You're going to cry.
Look under your chairs at home, folks. You have a baby under there.
He's crying.
He's crying. For the next 2 hours.
So you can't watch The Bachelor season finale. Sorry. What I think is like kind of baffling for me is that we haven't done any caregiver training for like new parents on how to soothe their babies and done follow-up. So this seems like a prime, like we should just go to the hospital right now, walk into the maternity ward, unasked, and that's a gold mine of research participants, right? So new mothers, giving them some training on how to soothe their baby, and then do some follow-up, do some generalization probes in their natural environment at 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and see if we see like more crying, less crying, satisfaction surveys, social validity surveys. It seems like that would be a really awesome way to extend this literature and be, more applicable. So because this was simulated, giving them actual behavioral skills training, role play, modeling, feedback, and seeing if that would, increase, confidence when babies are crying.
And I don't remember from the article, and certainly since we're talking about it, I didn't, grab this number. But was there anything about percentage of infants who are brought to hospitals due to suspected abuse?
I don't think so, actually.
I don't know that they offered that.
Because, you ask yourself, well, why isn't this a thing? Why don't parents?
Physical abuse is the leading cause of injury-related infant death, and the incidence of inflicted traumatic brain injury for children under 1 year of age has been estimated at 30 per 100,000. That's reported by Keenan et al. In 2003 on page 2.
So is it that it's... I mean, any child, any family, but certainly any infant going through that is too many, certainly. But is the reason there hasn't been more research into this area that it's not socially significant or not considered socially significant?
I'm not sure. This one says in one study reported that 6% of parents in their sample admitted to smothering, slapping, or shaking their infant to stop crying. Oh. That seems fairly harsh.
That seems like the bigger...
And that's admitted.
Yeah, admitted. So
see, that seems like the
triple that.
That seems like the scarier statistic.
Absolutely. Smothering seems pretty significant.
Because and those babies aren't necessarily the ones that are then going to, having dying or having brain injury.
Right.
But certainly every time that's happening, you're increasing the chances for that. And but it still seems like one of those issues. Is it just we're America? Because I know other countries are very different about healthcare. And not to make this political discussion about healthcare, but is it just in America, you raise your kids and they're your kids and don't tell anyone how to raise my kids situation? I'm just curious.
It might be.
I don't know. I mean, there's such a limited window of time in which to catch parents while they're at the hospital and they're new parents. So trying to figure out during that window of time who's at risk for being a future abuser, that seems really challenging, and the resources in order to investigate this are probably scarce.
Right. It might be interesting to see what other countries do in line with this research. So I'm going to be making a trip to Iceland in the summer.
Ooh.
I'm so excited. And we're going to be, what's it called?
Traveling.
Shadowing.
Touring.
Shadowing. We're going to be shadowing.
Eating?
We're going to be eating a ton, but we're going to be shadowing some behavior analysts who work with, just newly birthed, new parents, not newly birthed. New parents within their first days of conceiving. Newly christened parents, yeah. Within their first days of conceiving a child that may be at risk for having a disability.
Or?
After they conceive, they just had the baby.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
They start parent training real early in Iceland.
That's good for them. That's actually appropriate.
You have your government employee just pop out from, hey, everyone.
Hello.
What happened just here? soon as you buy a pregnancy test, someone follows you home. That's awesome.
They're a pretty small country. I mean, perhaps they have those
That's
resources.
true.
Everyone knows the minute you step out to get the pregnancy test.
You're like, uh-oh. Yeah, you can edit that out.
Okay.
That was awesome.
I guess you can keep it. But yeah, so I think that would be something that we should look at too. I don't know.
Interesting article, interesting discussion on that. Before we move on to our next article, the Kadey and Roane effects of access to a stimulating object on infant behavior during tummy time, a little bit lighter article. I do want everyone who is listening, who will be applying for CEUs, to please take down this keyword. Certainly, the first keyword is the episode number, which is 1. The second keyword is Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. So please note that, and we'll have a quick discussion at the end of the podcast about where you can send these keywords.
And a word from our sponsors.
Sunday. Oh, God, I don't know. Who's our...
Ice cream Sunday.
Ice cream Sunday. But that's not the keyword. It's Sunday the day. You're confusing the folks.
Not to confuse you.
So, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about tummy time. Now, Diana, why don't you start us off with a quick summary, and then we'll get into the procedures in this study.
Fabulous. Okay. So, as you said, Rob, this is a study by Kadey and Roane. It's published in JAMA in 2012. And there was one participant in this study. It was a little girl who did not want to participate in tummy time.
Can you actually, for our audience, tell everyone what tummy time is for those ones without children?
Do you have children, Jackie?
I don't think I do.
You don't recall?
I don't recall.
Absolutely. So tummy time is strongly encouraged from birth up until children are able to crawl. And the idea is that you're placing your baby on their tummy so that they can strengthen their neck muscles, their chest muscles, and their arm muscles. Some of those may have technical names. I'm not sure. In the past, babies were put on their tummies to go to sleep, right? But that's no longer the case. We do not put babies on their tummies to go to sleep because it increases the risk of SIDS. Sudden
infant death syndrome.
Yes. So instead, babies are put on their tummies during the day in order to strengthen those muscles. Those muscles are important to further their gross motor development and lead to having the appropriate level of trunk strength and upper arm strength in order to crawl and then get into everything and start eating the electrical cords.
Yep. So tummy time's kind of an invention of the past 15, 20 years because babies used to not need...
Now,
they didn't used to need quote-unquote tummy time because they just were on their stomach a ton. But based on the research into SIDS, you don't want to put your child to sleep on their tummy anymore, which means that they're now missing out on that. So much like many things with modern children, we now must schedule a time in which we allow it to happen. But this one, there's when you're talking about a death risk, this is certainly one that is this very, very reasonable expectation.
Right. The only problem there is that babies don't like to do tummy time.
Kids these days.
I know.
I used to love tummy time.
Me too.
I would probably love it now. Take a good long nap.
Sounds awesome. Babies don't like to do tummy time because it's hard. They're stressing their muscles. They're working out, you could say. And so they're feeling the burn when they're doing tummy time, and they don't want to do it. They want to they lay their head down a lot.
They cry.
They cry. The other, we talked about the SIDS risk, but the other piece of putting their babies on their tummy when they are awake is that it helps to prevent them getting a flat head in the back. So because they're asleep on their back and babies are asleep, I don't have the exact number, most of their day, let's say, then they're laying right flat on the back of their head, and it can get a little flat in the back. So that's also why you see more babies that wear those fancy helmets now, the little white plastic helmets. Have you seen those, Jackie?
No.
You're making a funny face.
I have not.
Oh.
Are they like bicycle helmets?
No, they're more like kind of wrestler.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry. Wrestler helmet's not, but it's more like a it was probably more like a wrestler helmet, not like the ear one, but sort of like what you might see in martial arts. those helmets.
Oh,
It's hard plastic.
Yes.
oh.
And
But that shit
it comes in
around
2
it.
pieces.
Yours didn't have one.
Nope.
Bad parents right here. Wear your helmets.
They don't have to have
You don't want them to have a helmet.
Oh, okay.
No, it's fine if they do. It's fine if they do.
No, but if they have a helmet, it is because they spent too much time and the back of their head is flattening because their skull is still softer.
We can
so
edit
it's
that part
not.
out.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's not.
I was like,
again,
But it's not. I don't think it's not the fault of the parent. I mean, I think
no.
some babies.
That's just how your baby is spending time,
Right.
and
Okay.
you might have children who are more susceptible to that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like you're a terrible parent. It's happened, but it is a concern that you would want to have addressed.
Okay.
Right. So this study was looked at a little girl who did not enjoy tummy time, and they found a way for her to engage in tummy time more. That is the point of the study. It's a very simple study.
This is one of those that you read and you're like, "What? This isn't recent. I thought of that." I literally did think about this just the other day. The idea of my kid hates tummy time. How can I make this more fun? I forgot to publish it though.
Or take data, turns out.
No, my anecdotal data was not going to cut it.
Right. That's the thing, it's stuff like this where it's happening all the time, but no one's reporting on it is just as important to actually
Absolutely.
get down on paper and get published so that others who may not have thought of this on their own can now have the idea.
Or, everyone, it's sort of the difference, common sense isn't necessarily a good thing, because if it's common, it means everyone's had this idea. It's nice sometimes to say, well, I never thought of this, but is everyone kind of wrong? Or is everyone making up a reason that this exists that doesn't help us in terms of applying what we know? You say this because, hey, it's a thing you say, but why do you say it? Is there an extension you could go from there? That's a little off topic. Why don't we get into the article itself, into the procedure? Well, I can be off topic. I'm the host. That's my job.
Okay.
Oh, no, my job is to be on topic, actually. Sorry. I
Fine.
reversed that.
You reversed that.
So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the procedure here.
Alrighty, sounds good. So this study, there was one participant. She was a 7-month-old girl. Her name in the study was Meadow.
Aww.
And
I bet she was cute.
I'm sure she was. Now, it happened that she was born as a preemie. She was born at 33 weeks, but I don't really think that was,
Relevant.
Yeah, I think that was maybe just by chance. However, she was 7 months old and still not really engaging in as much head raising as you would expect to see for a child of that age. So even though adjusted, perhaps she was on track, but that might have been part of what facilitated them to do this study.
Okay.
So she needed to engage in tummy time in order to strengthen her neck and chest muscles, but she did not enjoy engaging in tummy time as indicated by the high levels of crying that she did engage in. They also talk about non-compliance for tummy time on the part of the infant, which I think is a little bit hilarious term. If you're putting your head down, you are non-compliant, right? Because that is part of that's what tummy time is picking your head up off the ground while you're laying on your tummy. So I guess that's how they're defining non-compliance, but it just sounds funny.
I don't know. I would disagree with that. I've worked with a number of students who, for whatever, short-term, long-term medical reasons, engage in certain behaviors. Things are maybe physically harder for them. And I really hate giving it a label of look at their non-compliant, like they're actively just trying to be bad. I don't.
Well, the term has some problems.
I don't love non-compliant. It always comes off as very passive. Like, if they put their head down, they're actively, this is a behavior they're engaged in. Well, I mean, they physically can't keep their head up. That's not quite the same thing.
Right. Well, as you'll come to see,
that's my bias of the term, I suppose.
They were able to have Meadow hold her head up immediately once they had the conditions right. So it's not that she can't hold her head up.
Is it why would she bother?
Perhaps the proper motivation was not in place for her to do so.
Oh,
So
Meadow.
she was non-compliant. Just kidding.
So what'd they do?
First, they did a small reinforcer assessment to look at different toys that might engage her. And the toy or the activity, I guess, that showed the highest level of engagement was a video made for babies. I have to think that it was like a
Baby Einstein.
Baby Einstein. Is that what they're called? Like
Yeah.
Where
the
they're playing
Mozart
classical
songs,
music and
it has the
flashing a
puppets
bunch of
and all
stuff, yeah.
that stuff.
I love
I'm
those.
pretty sure. I mean, babies seem to. It's like baby crack, those things. So I bet that's what it was. So they found that was the highest preferred item for Meadow. So they just had a comparison between two conditions, a baseline condition in which she was placed on her tummy, and they propped up in front of her just a white screen, and then an enhanced condition in which she was placed on her tummy, and in front of her was propped up a laptop or a video, maybe iPad, with the baby video on it. So they measured two things. They were looking at the level of negative vocalizations, which was crying, that she engaged in the two different settings, and then also the percentage of the session in which her head was up off the ground. And they found in baseline she engaged in a high level of crying and a lower level of elevated head. When they put the treatment condition in place, crying dropped immediately to 0 and head up immediately increased to much higher rates. It was a reversal design. They went right back to baseline. They saw a increase in crying, decrease in head elevation, and then they put the treatment back into place, which verified that the treatment was highly effective at increasing elevated head.
This actually is a really nice example of a reversal design.
Sure is,
so if you're ever teaching a class on what a reversal design looks like, I mean, this one's like spot on.
It's a beauty.
So this one is a really good example of how you can actually demonstrate functional control.
Mm-hmm. Let me describe it to you. It's like real high, and then there's a line, and then it's real low.
And then
then it switches again.
Thanks, Rob.
Right.
Remember at home, we do encourage everyone, and we have links on our website, to read these articles yourself and bring your own conclusions.
Take a look
We're
at
just
the graphs.
here for
It's
the
hard
discussion.
to describe a graph.
Yeah, it
No,
is hard.
I just did. It was really good. Didn't you hear?
Yeah, thanks. And that is what we looked at in this study. Mm-hmm. They found an item that worked, and once it was in place, they saw an increase in head elevation, which helped little Meadow strengthen her core muscles.
All right.
So one thing I want to bring up as
Sure.
a potential, why is it like this, is if you look under the response measurement and in the inter-observer agreement, they only conducted inter-observer agreement in 29% of the sessions, and typically we want to do at least 33, right? Mm-hmm. And so that seems a little bit low, and they really only got inter-observer agreement for 84%, which seems fairly low to me.
Especially for 29.
Yeah, especially for 29%. So the range was 81 to 87.
Yeah.
And for negative vocalization was only 82% with a range of 74 to 90%. So I think I would have liked to see a little more stringent controls in the inter-observer agreement, only because I see that as fairly low when you're looking at something so simple.
I don't know if it is simple, though.
But it could be. If you have a really good operational definition that is both clear,
vocalization,
concise, and objective. Thank you. Mic drop.
Yeah. Okay.
One other thing that kind of what is it? Hits my goat. What's it when people say?
Gets my goat. Grinds your gears.
Right. Is that they say that their X values was calculated and multiplied by 100%.
Oh no!
It's not 100%.
God, yeah.
Come on.
We had to get that
That's
out
tough.
of there.
Did they misuse there, or there anywhere in this article? I didn't notice it.
No,
I'm usually
this is
pretty
very
good
well
at
written.
that.
It actually was very well written. The
Okay.
100% though, man, that's a trend that needs to go away.
All right,
agree.
everyone at home, if you're researching, you're publishing research, please take out your percentage sign. If we don't do something now, it's going to become commonly accepted. So please make your stand.
Right.
That's the. And while we're talking about stands, you might want to stand by for our next keyword, which is croissant 01. Croissant 01. CROISSANT 01. So remember, that is your second keyword. So let's continue talking. Sorry to interrupt with that, but let's move on. Let's keep going on with our discussion.
I wonder how we could extend this research. So we've looked at tummy time. Do you think there's any way that we could replicate, obviously with the more participants, more babies, but also extend this research?
I have another area that could potentially be problematic for parents, which would be bath time.
Oh.
Lots of babies hate bath time, particularly when they're young, because I don't know if you've ever seen a baby bath, Jackie, but it's like...
I haven't.
Why not?
I'm just kidding. Because I don't have children.
So it's like a big plastic thing, and then in the middle of it, there's like a baby seat, which is maybe plastic, or sometimes it's like a fabric sling thing, and then you fill it up with like tepid water, like an inch of that, because you don't want your baby to drown, right? And then you put your baby in there naked, and no part of the baby is even touching the water. So they're just like laying there, like exposed.
I mean, imagine sitting in your own bathtub with about an inch of water under you, and that's your bath. You're going to wash yourself.
Oh, that sounds like the worst day ever.
Right. And they have no idea what's happening to them. This
Absolutely.
has never happened before, and they're very cold, and then they're wet, and then they...
Why does this we don't need to talk about this now, but that sounds horrible.
That's just, that's the baby bath.
Okay.
That's the experience. So a lot of babies don't like it.
So this would be a really good way to extend this research, is to see if we could find a preference assessment that would improve the quality of bath time.
Yeah. Yeah. It might be Baby Einstein videos.
It might be. Get a TV in your bathroom, everyone.
Yep.
Just plug that in, put it right on the corner of your bathtub.
Super safe.
Leave
for
your baby. You just go do something else for a while.
And then put the
We
hair
do
dryer
not
there,
condone
too.
whatever Rob just said. Well, this study also bears replication, certainly.
Absolutely.
It was only one participant.
Right.
And it worked really well for her. But I would like to see, there might be some parents who would be very cautious about showing their 7-month-old TV.
Absolutely.
Which is completely understandable. So I would like to see this perhaps replicated with some other types of stimulating items as well, to see if we couldn't expand the repertoire of potential distractors.
Yes. I think I wouldn't be too worried about it in terms of, say, harmful reinforcer or using harmful reinforcer, because I think a lot of the screen time recommendations are not so much it's frying your kid's brain, so much as it is so easy because it is apparently reinforcing even to a 7-month-old
Right.
Yeah.
to be like, hey, you seem to love this TV, and it is easy and passive for me to now parent you. I think that is...
Plus, babies don't learn anything from this.
No,
stuff.
it's a failure of learning. They're just sitting there, just like young children. They're just staring at the TV. Now that works out for tummy time because you just need them to be staring at something. To do that, they have to lift their trunk. They have to lift their head. So it works in your favor. But I would also be curious: could other more active parenting toys have a similar result? Because ideally, that would be perfect. You get your child doing tummy time. You're interacting with them, and you're giving them something that potentially they could reach out for, have other learning experiences occur at the same time.
No, I tried this with the water mat that we bought for our 7-month-old. It's a mat. It's like a plastic thing, like you would blow up like an inner tube, except it's clear inside, and you put water in it, and there's little fishies inside. So then when you pat it with your baby hand, it makes the little things jump around.
Will it work with my adult hand?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can
works
play
with
with
your
it.
adult hand too, but it's intended for baby hands.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Just making sure, just clarifying for our audience.
Yes. But however, my baby that's supposed to be doing tummy time did it for about 2 seconds and then just flipped himself over and said, that's enough tummy time.
See, there's non-compliance, right?
Yeah, right there.
You are actively escaping this demand.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if he would like a Baby Einstein video. We don't have those.
Occasionally, the older kids are watching TV. He does seem very fascinated.
We know he likes Madden 16.
Yes, he loves video games.
Yeah,
So.
so.
What's his? He knows the Konami code already.
Fine.
Call back. Boom.
It's just
That's how you host a podcast.
One thing that I find is interesting that we can kind of tie this together is because if a child doesn't want to be in tummy time, they may be crying a lot. So caregivers may actually terminate tummy time because of the crying. So their caregiving behaviors are being negatively reinforced by the crying, which will actually stigmatize further development of their baby.
Yeah.
And there's certainly
Really
lines.
good point.
Yeah, and there's certainly lines of research in which adults pay more attention or interact more with children who are not giving them a hard time or not engaged in challenging behavior. So it's, I mean, just like you said, in terms of the negative reinforcement, they're going to actively avoid even setting up tummy time. I mean, I can remember when we've acted like, should we do tummy time? Because
it's a cascade effect. It's like your baby's happy, you put them in tummy time, they start to fuss.
Why
try
are you
to
so
keep
mean?
them in tummy time more. they're full on crying to the point where they are inconsolable. You have to basically like feed them and get them to go to sleep in order to stop the crying.
Might not be the case for every baby, but certainly you can have that kind of an emotional reaction, which it does derail everything else you're doing.
Right, which will then
I'm like,
lead
no,
to,
I don't want him to do tummy time. I need to cook dinner.
Right, which will also lead, to a chain of behavior that will then further terminate tummy time in the future. So you've terminated tummy time. Now, every time I'm in tummy time, I'm going to cry. You're going to feed me.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's a
Effectively
cascading
escaping
effect.
tummy time
Absolutely.
and accessing the highest preferred reinforcers.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. Well, any other thoughts on this article on tummy time?
My other thought here was that I thought it was a little interesting that this was not just a differential reinforcement article.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was not set up as though the infant needed to lift her head and then the TV was turned on. It was freely available during the entire session, and she didn't need to lift her head in order to see the video, but she could still hear it playing even when her head was down. So it was really more of an antecedent manipulation as far as what was available in the context of the session that increased the behavior.
Would you predict similar results had it been set up as a differential reinforcement procedure? Or based on baby age, hard to develop that contingency?
I don't know.
I think, based on the limited knowledge that I know, is babies understand contingencies, right? So they understand that when they cry, something happens.
They understand certain contingencies.
At 7 months old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Babies have operant behavior
Right.
at 7 months old.
So couldn't we use a highly preferred reinforcer to increase head raising?
Oh, yeah. I do think that that's the case. I don't think that it's necessary to,
Oh, no.
refrain from presenting the reinforcer in this case until you see the target behavior, because presumably for her it was the visual component of
Right.
the video that was reinforcing.
But for another baby, it may not be.
Right. And then they could just lay there and listen to music and they would be content.
Put your face on the floor, being non-compliant. Just listen to your baby Einstein.
Yeah.
Or Mozart.
So I thought that was just an interesting component here, that it was a
That's a good point.
antecedent manipulation versus a reinforcement.
Excellent.
Right. Yep.
Well, it's time to move on to our last segment, the dissemination station, where we sort of talk about some topics or ideas related to our research, but not necessarily directly reflected in the articles themselves. So, again, our topic being infant behavior. We have a couple thoughts on that. So Diana, what's your stop on the dissemination station today?
Choo choo! I think that both of these articles spoke to not only infant behavior, but actually parent behavior too. So both of these we could reflect back and say we were looking at negative reinforcement on the part of the parent behavior. So what did parents do to stop the crying in the context of vertical, horizontal rocking, feeding the baby, and also perhaps removing the baby from tummy time.
Absolutely.
And when you're looking at really young infants, much of the behavior for a parent is controlled by finding ways to escape that crying. And that, to me, is exactly why Thompson and company did their study, and it's an extremely important area of research. And what Jackie and I were talking back and forth about Iceland and what has been done thus far in America. And the two things that I know of as far as what do we want to get out there to parents as they're leaving the hospital to make sure that they're knowing and remembering about how to care for their infants. And two things came to mind. One is very well established, which is the back is best slogan, I guess you could say, reminding parents to always, always, always put their baby on their back to go to sleep. And that's very much inundated to parents when they're in the hospital. All of the Halo brand sleep sacks, it's embroidered right on the collar, and the sleep sacks, for anyone who doesn't know, is like a wearable blanket for a baby.
Want one?
So it's the Snuggie.
I know,
for
yeah,
babies.
it's the Snuggie of infants. The idea there being you don't want to put your baby in the crib with a blanket that could end up covering their face, so instead they wear this adorable little zip-up vest thingy that covers their feet too. And has back is best embroidered right on there. So it's another way to help remind parents, do not put your baby on their tummy to go to sleep. So that was implemented, I believe, in about the mid-90s, and it's been highly successful at reducing the rate of SIDS over time. The other one that came to mind for me, and this is a little bit more recent, but it's the 30 Million Words Initiative. So I don't know if this is currently going out to parents when they're leaving the hospital, but at some point in the early child development, parents are contacting this initiative, which is based in a book by Hart and Risley called Meaningful Differences, which was a study done in the 70s that looked at how many words were children hearing up through, I believe it was age 5. And there was a huge discrepancy between different populations in the U.S. and how many words those kids were hearing at that very early age. Greatly influenced many factors down the road for them. So obviously, more words was better. So this is a recent study that's piggybacking on that research from long ago called the 30 Million Words Initiative. And they have their little slogan is the 3 T's, which is tune in, which means listen in to your child, talk more, so let them hear a lot of words, a lot of different vocabulary, and take turns with them. So practicing that social reciprocity and talking back and forth with them. And the idea there being that if parents can remember these 3 T's, then they can hopefully drastically increase the number of words that their children are hearing before age 3, when their brain is just ready to suck in all of that.
Is the behavioral term your brain sucking?
Yep, it is. Yep. There's actually a little spot in your brain that's taking in language. No, wait, no.
Noam Chomsky, thanks so much for joining us today.
No, if you put 3 T's in the internet, you'll get TJ Jackson, Tyrell Jackson, and Taj Jackson. They're all vocalists. Just as a side note.
Thanks, Jack.
They are unrelated.
They're an American R&B pop music group. Featuring
Okay.
the 3 sons of Tito.
Wow.
Tito Jackson?
Tito Jackson.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's really good to know.
Well, I like either of those 3 T's are better than sort of the 60s version with the tune in, turn on, drop out.
Ooh, I didn't even know this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's counterculture kind of old-timey
Yeah.
stuff. That was the problem. These baby boomer parents. If it's not the babies, it's the elderly.
Who is that? Who said that?
Caro.
The Kool-Aid test guy.
Caro.
Oh, yeah.
Kerouac?
No, not that Kool-Aid man. Who is it? Now I have to look it up.
Kerouac? Kesey.
Kesey. Very good. So it's great that we were teaching parents to put babies on their backs to sleep. It's great that we're teaching parents to talk to their babies as much as possible. But I think it would also be great if we had some type of slogan.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking of, oh yeah. Sorry. What's the slogan?
When you talk to your baby, I will jump into your room and be like, oh, yeah!
You've missed the point. I think it would also be great if we had some type of slogan that we could give parents, brand new parents in the hospital, to help them better know how to perhaps handle their baby.
And their challenging behavior.
Yeah, thank you.
AKA crying.
One thing that's maybe gaining some traction is the 5 S's, right? Are you guys familiar with that? And it's like shushing, swaddling.
And doc.
Using the 5 S's, happiest baby.
There we go.
Oh, I've heard a lot. I never read that book. It was recommended to me before our first child was born. The happiest baby on the block.
Swaddle, side or stomach position, shush, swing, suck, and sleep.
Okay.
That's 6.
That is 6.
Okay.
Maybe
Disregard sleep. Oh, that must be what happens after you do the 5 S's.
Yeah.
Great. So those are all some nice techniques as far as ways that you could potentially calm a crying or colicky baby. So maybe that's what needs to be better disseminated. The 5 S's.
Yeah.
Maybe we should also experimentally make sure that they are
right.
The best methods.
Well, I think part of, regardless of whether best method or not, the idea, because I remember being in the hospital, they had so many classes that you were told you could go to. And as a new parent, I was terrified, so I went to every class they would possibly offer. But I'm guessing if they had any statistics on that, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't be 100% of parents go to like the 5 main classes that the nurses are teaching on bathing or diaper changing, or even have gone to those classes beforehand, as part of their pre-parent training. What do they call it?
Yeah, that's what they call it.
So I think you'd want to know, well, what if they had a couple succinct things that you could give people as a quick cue, that it's mandatory. It's like a mandatory 15-minute talk where they really hit a couple of these kind of well, they're not mnemonics exactly, but these phrases, these kind of key phrases home, hit them home. So at least something stuck. And then if you repeated them and you got to see them, maybe it's not going to be as good as behavioral skills training, but it's at least going to be better than, potentially would be better than nothing.
The nothing that's currently happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
All right. Well, that was our episode for everyone at home. Thanks so much for listening to our inaugural episode. We hope you enjoyed it. We are currently busy working on our various media presences. For now, you certainly can visit us at abainsidetrack.com, www.abainsidetrack.com, where every episode we will have a link to the articles that we are talking about, as well as a place you can download the episode. We're working on getting these episodes up onto iTunes, so hopefully you'll be able to download and subscribe to them soon, so you won't have to worry about visiting the website all the time. For now, if you need to get in touch with us, we'll kind of share our own contact information. So if you need to get in touch with me, you can find me at, or if you want to email us, you can find us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. We don't have a Facebook page up quite yet. If you do want to contact us through social media, you can find my personal Twitter at playing_our_song. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ABA Insidetrack as well. Feel free to leave us a review on iTunes, send us an email with your thoughts, concerns, or you can, like us on Facebook. Future topics. If you have ideas of areas of interest, we'd love to hear from you. For those of you who are listening to this episode and would like to get CEUs, you can go to the website, abainsidetrack.com. We have at the navigation page a link, Get CEUs, and that will describe exactly how to send information to prove that you listened to this whole episode. Again, you're going to need to know your 3 keywords, the episode number, and then 2 other keywords. So for those of you interested in receiving CEUs for listening to this episode, you can check out the website and go to the top of the page. It says Get CEUs. There's a nice detailed list of kind of a syllabus generally of what we'll be talking about, as well as steps for getting CEUs. Now, again, this is our inaugural episode, so we do want to stress we're very excited that we are able to offer CEUs for listening to the show and listening to our discussion. However, we do want to stress that we do not want anybody listening to 32 episodes. We don't even have 32 episodes, so you're stuck there. But at some point, we do not want anybody listening to the hopefully we'll get to 32 at some point, but the back catalog and thinking that's...
You can listen to as many as you want.
We want people to be listening to this. Our goal is education first. However, if you are interested in getting CEUs, please be sure to limit the number that you get per renewal cycle so that you have plenty of opportunities to go to conferences, local conferences, other training topics, other webinars online. Please don't limit yourself just to hearing us talk. As much as we want you to hear that every other week, we don't want that to be the only means of professional development for you, as fabulous as I'm sure you will all consider us.
And one last little plug here. If you are interested in pursuing your master's degree in applied behavior analysis, I urge you to check out Regis College's program where we have a master's in applied behavior analysis. We have a 2 or 3 year program, and we have such interesting things as international studies and dog training, and lots of exciting things that we do there. So check it out, regiscollege.edu.
Everyone, thanks so much for listening. We really hope you enjoy this episode. If you did, please make sure to let your other professionals in the field or other coworkers know about this. We love talking about applied behavior analysis. It's our career. It's what we spend a huge chunk of our days and now apparently nights doing. So we really want to make sure that it's a show that's enjoyable and it's a show that is helpful to you, the practitioner or researcher or ABA dilettante, I guess. So in any case, I'm Robert Perry Cruz.
I'm Diana.
And I'm Jackie.
All right, we'll see everyone in 2 weeks' time. But until then, remember, keep reading. Bye, everyone.
Bye.